I'm here today to do my Book of the Month review for July. And this month it was Thin Air, A Ghost Story by Michelle Paver. This is apparently the second book she's written. I didn't read the first one, just this one, and I actually really enjoyed it. And it is what the title suggests. It's a ghost story. It takes place on a sacred mountain in the Himalayas. This group of British men are trying to climb it, and the story is kind of how this spirals a little bit. And the book takes place in 1935, so all the technology is a little bit less, and so things like oxygen tanks and the compressed oxygen that people will often take with them on mountain climbing is not really available easily or cheaply for people. Also, they're just these weirdly proud guys, so yeah. To me, this read as a typical ghost story, like the stuff I used to read when I was a preteen. It's creepy, the overall tone is really bleak, and it was a really good time. So from here, I'll move into my likes and dislikes. I will, as always, start with my likes. The first like is the overall tone of the story. It was just fun and creepy, and just, like I said, your typical ghost story. The drama and the tension building were awesome, and it just really lent itself well to developing the tension and fear for the characters and thusly for the reader. My second like is that the characters are all flawed. I did enjoy not liking all of the characters but still being invested in this group and how the story was going to play out. And a lot of that had to do with the interpersonal relationships, but especially that one between the brothers. And then my third like is the pacing. As you saw when I kind of picked it up, it's a very short book. I think it was like 200 something pages, so super quick, and you were just going the entire time. The story never dragged, and the pacing lent itself well to helping build the tension really effectively because you were constantly moving forward. And now on to my dislikes. My big dislike was how the British mountaineers were treating the locals. I know it's like a product of the time being in the 1930s. I really struggled to read it. Although I do feel the author did a good job kind of showing that this is a commentary of the time and not something they personally believe. So I was able to separate it or compartmentalize it a little bit, but it still was very hard for me to read because these people have this beautiful set of beliefs and they're just completely dismissed. And then I guess the other negative, it wasn't a horrifying ghost story, it was just creepy. And this is only a negative because how I read it on the back, I expected more horror elements, and it was really just a ghost story. So although I enjoyed it, the bar that I set in terms of how terrified the book would make me was just a little bit too high. So ultimately, although I enjoyed it, I was a little disappointed it wasn't more intense. And that's really all I have for dislikes. So I will just move into the characters briefly here. As I mentioned, I loved that I just liked a lot of the characters. I loved a lot of the interpersonal relationships, especially the brother rivalry, because as with a lot of things in this story, you can't tell if it's in the narrator's head or if it actually exists. Although the treatment of the locals is time period appropriate, it was hard to read, and it was part of why I didn't like some of the characters. But overall, the characters, while one-dimensional, fit the role they were assigned very well and just really helped progress the story, even though they didn't get a lot of personal growth themselves. So with that, I will do a quick wrap up here. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it, like I said, but it wasn't the most memorable book I've read, and it's not the most memorable ghost story I've read. But I loved that you questioned fantasy and reality. I loved that you both empathized and hated a lot of the characters, and I loved that the story really reminds me of the Titanic in the sense that what can go wrong will go wrong. And I love that trope, especially in ghost stories. I find it makes the story a lot more interesting because things spiral and not necessarily spiral in the way that you would expect. And with that, I am done my spoiler-free portion. I will be jumping into the spoiler portion right away here, so this is kind of your last warning. Well, okay, it's your only warning. I know this is going to be much shorter than my usual book of the months. And part of that is because I do not have kind of a spoiler chat this time like I usually do, where I have a few things I want to rant and rave or comment on. This was very short, very straightforward. There really wasn't a lot of extra for me to dig into, or rather not a lot that I did dig into. I just enjoyed it as the ghost story it was presented as. I still want to do the book club questions. 6, it'll be quick, and then we'll wrap. My first question, as always, is what is your initial reaction? For this book, I was really intrigued. I haven't read a ghost story since I was about 13 or so I was really pumped to read another one, especially one that was aimed at a more adult audience. 2, what is your favorite chapter or scene? For me, this would be towards the end, where Stephen kind of lost his grip on reality. And you weren't entirely sure if he was going crazy, just not being believed, if it was lack of oxygen, but it was a lot of fun watching him unravel, which sounds terrible. Don't take that out of context. Question 3, how did the characters change throughout the book? In this book, they really didn't. If anything, a couple of them got more sad because somebody they loved died, but overall, they were pretty stagnant. 4, how do you feel about the ending? I actually really loved the ending for this book, largely because the ending fit the buildup of the rest of the book. So I felt like the payoff was really effective and really appropriate. 5, would you read another book by this author? Heck yes. I know she has another kind of ghost story book, and I would definitely pick that one up as well. I really enjoyed myself, even if it wasn't the best book I've read this year. And then my 6th and final question. Does this book remind you of any other books? And I have to be honest, it does not. Like I mentioned in the first question and in the spoiler-free portion, I haven't really read a lot of ghost stories since I was about a preteen, so I don't have a lot to compare it to, and the books I read as a preteen, I don't remember what they were called because that's 15 years ago. And so that's all I really have to say. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!